So, where do you start in thinking about, creating a workout? A lot of times, I might use, previous workouts as inspiration. I gave a lot of examples of that on our CrossFit. This CrossFit programming article goes through all sorts of different examples of different kinds of CrossFit style workouts that you might do. And there's a whole bunch of variations here. But for example, one workout that you could write, let's say we wanted to do one, we'll do maybe one for strength and one for conditioning, right? So for conditioning, maybe we do something like 5 rounds per time. Okay, so that could be our actual workout itself. And then once we have the workout, we can start to work backwards in terms of what we're going to do. So if we're going to do back squat, right, our warm up is probably going to be air squats, maybe, high knee raises, maybe some jump rope if we want to put some jump rope, or just lateral jumps so we don't need to get that extra equipment out, right? And since it's a lot of squats, maybe we'll do some plank, right? And now we have the movements, and so now we can turn it into a little mini warm-up, right? So we can do 20 air squats, 30 high knee raises, 15 lateral jumps, and then 30-second plank. We can do 2 rounds, and that should take probably about 6 to 8 minutes to do that, including any technique on the air squats. Okay. Then we have to count for teaching technique, right? The back squat is complicated for beginners to work. So we'll work on our skill and maybe load determination or load scaling. And we'll give ourselves 10 minutes for that. And that's on the back squat. In terms of coaching actual running technique in this example, you'd be able to coach it if you knew how to coach running. There are certain techniques that you need to coach for that. Although most people can manage a quarter mile without too much technique. There are stuff to look for, like any other technique, to make sure you don't hurt yourself running. And then our kind of like cool down and mobility might be butterfly stretch, groin, couch stretch, quads, and maybe hamstring, seated straight leg holds for hamstrings. And that's kind of the general one. You might make modifications based on the individual person. Certainly if they have trouble with their feet, maybe you do some, cross ball mobilization of their feet. running. It really depends on what a person needs. You write a general program and then you make your modifications as needed. And we say maybe we'll give 12 minutes for this section. 5 rounds for time. That needs a time cap. And maybe we'll do 22 minutes for that. So that's 22 plus 12 is 34, plus 10 is 44. So we're a little bit over what we're looking for. So we'd either have to shorten the time cap, and maybe 4 rounds might be what a lot of people can do. You'd want to have a good idea of what kind of squatting time that they could do. Or if you really weren't sure, you could always do 16 minutes AMRAP, in which case time is fixed, and then you score rounds and reps completed.
Okay, for rounds and reps completed, that's what the whiteboard and markers are for.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So the skills, there's a set time limit you add. It's not what I think what I was misreading. I think some places I was thinking is that was part of the actual workout.
Well, you can put it as part of the workout, but it still takes real time to do, so you have to account for it. Now, if a person doesn't need the skill work on the back squat per se, like they just know how to do it and it's easier for them, you could adjust the workout and make the workout longer because you don't need to work on the skills.
But you're not going to do that with beginners because it's a starting point for them.
Yep, and it's rare that even the movement like the back squat, there's a lot of performance points for that. Getting it exactly right. Usually there's always technique you could be working on. So especially in personal training, you usually will need that time to work on the little nuances. Certainly you could also work on the running technique if you're comfortable coaching running, or jump rope, or there's a lot of things you could substitute in for treadmill, right? We could do, I don't know, 50 single unders. Or from time, it's probably more like 100, and then you single unders with jump rope, right? And then you would coach that instead.
Okay.
Similar kind of movement. I might want to just score reps though on the squat, like how many times you get through this. So maybe it's just rounds completed, because that's a lot to count. But would work much the same.
Yeah, that looks definitely, well, the way you're doing it, I mean, you're doing it off the top of your head, so you make it look very easy.
Well, let's do another one. Now you might do where did my cursor go? So we do one for like strength, right? Let's say we wanted to focus on the deadlift as our main movement today, right? And we say we might do a 5x5 deadlift, or maybe we'll do a 3x5 deadlift, and then we'll do, let's say we needed to work, part of the deadlift, which people have trouble with. As we can either do like a halting deadlift, or we can do a Romanian deadlift if we wanted to add another variation. And maybe we go a little higher reps on that. Because the weight will be lower. In that case, since we're doing a lighter weight, that almost can work as a warm-up, so maybe we'll go that direction. And deadlifts, the main element, I usually will work my accessories around what that movement requires, right? And deadlifts have a lot of core and lat stability, so maybe we'll do med ball pullovers or cable pullovers. And we can do lateral. Let's say we wanted to pick those movements. So we have some lats, we have lateral flexion, and side plank is resist lateral flexion, right? So we have some accessories to stabilize the body for the deadlift, which makes a lot of sense to put them there. Whether or not you need to put them in advance, it really depends on the person's resting functionality. You could put them in the beginning as a warm-up, right? These could be the warm-ups for sure.
Right.
Depends on the intensity. It's perfectly fine to do them before too, because it just depends on how hard you're gonna do those particular exercises. So maybe we'll make them the warm-up. Now, the only kind of caveat to that is the principle of whatever you work first tends to get the most intensity and focus and stuff like that. And there's a lot of truth to that, which is why you tend to put the more complex movements first. At the same time, doing these movements first helps create neurological connection to them, so they could be done first. It really depends on how hard you're doing these, whether they're at warm-up intensity or, more of like strength work. In classes, I'll usually use the same exercises to save time because I teach a lot of people, and I might just shorten it. And repeat the exercise or increase the weights. We might do this as a lighter weight because you don't need a whole lot of weight. So maybe 30 pounds. And then this is body weight. And then maybe way after we do the workout, I'm gonna try to get a little higher weight for that. And actually get some, exhaustion in these muscles, because you don't want to have them exhausted either, right? Because then that prevents them from doing the stability work that they need to. And then, what would be our mobility for that? Well, we did a lot of lat work, so we could do lat rolling. We can do standing moon, crescent pose. And maybe some grip work we can do, because there's a lot of grip work like that. We can mobilize the hand. We can do like an finger and hand extension stretch. There's a lot of grip involved. And that is a perfectly good workout to do for, working the deadlift. If we wanted to make it more complete, we can talk about how much time. This is a little bit bigger of a warm up. So maybe we do 8 minutes. The Romanian deadlift time cap is going to be maybe 12 minutes. I can even put in headings on here so that that's why we have headings in the doc. It makes it easier to read. And since this is designed to be heavier, maybe we do 15 minutes here. So we're at 20, 35. And so, we look through this part, this is going to take a good amount of time if we're going heavier. Maybe we take out the side plank here so that we can actually get through this.
You're already at 52 minutes.
Yeah, that's why we write them down, so we make sure we haven't over-programmed what can actually be done,
All right.
right? And the mobility work, that's going to take, as we wrote it, it's going to take at least 8 minutes.
Now, when determining the actual minutes, are you going off of your experience doing those?
Yeah, so, lat rolling tends to take about 3 minutes to do both sides. Half crescent pose probably will take about 45 seconds, so say 90 seconds total, so it's to each side. The hand stretch, you have to show them how to do that. That might take 3 minutes to do. And wrists usually doesn't take too long, maybe 2 minutes. So that's where I came up with 8 minutes from. 6, 8, 9.5 minutes. So now we can look back and say, okay, this is kind of what we want to do. Where are we in terms of our times? So 8, 20, 35, 50, 59 minutes, right? So we have to take something out. And we're going to say, honestly, we could either take this piece out. Because we're doing 2 different lifts, essentially, it's basically, that's where the time is. We have 4 elements in this workout. We really only have time for 3. And you can think about what's more valuable. Really depends on the level of the person. For me, this way is probably the better way to do it, I would think. Unless you needed to warm this up, in which case you drop it from here. So I'd probably do one or the other. They could be done as a warm-up or not. I probably would just do the Romanian deadlift as my warm-up, is what I would do. But because it's a beginner workout and we know that they tend to have weaknesses here, maybe it's better to cut this part. Right, and then if we look now at our time, 8 minutes, 20, 35, 44. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's kind of why, when I talk about when I review programs, a lot of it is going to be, sometimes there's not necessarily one right answer. I can certainly might say, if you put both of these in, well, what was your thinking of putting both of these in? Well, the Romanian deadlift, it's at a lighter weight, so it kind of works as a good warm up and focuses on teaching that element and getting speed past the knees. And then we'll do some really heavier ones closer to 3x5. And that's a perfectly fine sequence. You could even do it the other way if you wanted to. And then whether or not you do this kind of warm up beforehand or put it afterwards as accessory work really depends on the level of the athlete, as the truth of it. I usually do it the other way because I can just warm up usually using the exercises. But if you have a lot of warm ups, you don't have a lot of time for accessories. So you have to balance what's really needed for the member.
Okay.
Or maybe you reduce some of the mobility at the end, if the member doesn't need it. Some people do need this kind of work. So that's really what you're working on. What are you doing that's making it hard for you?
Well, I'm trying to set it up in the same format that you did as the personal trainer, and and then I'm guessing at how long it's going to take. And then, of course, I'm thinking is, all right, what would be the appropriate workout? What would be the appropriate warm up and cool down for a workout? So I think I'm kind of like looking.
Let's cover those two. Let me answer those two questions for you. So the first one, how long should it take to do? Depends on what you're talking about, right? So if I go with the Romanian deadlift, right, I can think, well, how long does it take to do 15 reps of Romanian deadlift? 2.5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. It's at a lightweight, so I can do a work to rest ratio of 2:1. So 3 minutes. 3 times 4, 12. That's where 12 comes from.
Right.
The 3x5 is going to take a longer rest period, right? And then we also have to set up the bar, which is a pain to do. So let's say I gave them 3 minutes to do just the 5 reps, right? It's the same time, but it's less reps, so you can get away with it. That takes me up to 9 minutes. That gives me 6 minutes to deal with moving plates and stuff like that. We'll be able to do the whole deadlift that's needed to do in 9 minutes, maybe even 12 if they needed a longer rest for whatever reason.
All right.
The mobility times I already broke out with you. And then the warm up, you think about, well, if I was doing these pullovers, I got to set that up, so that could take a minute or two to set that up. The lateral cable bend is pretty easy. That's just from the cable machine. And the side planks, each one of those exercises will probably take a minute, and it gives you like a minute maybe to set up. So, you might be able to do that in 6 minutes. Depends if they take breaks or not and how quickly they transition between the exercises. But 6 to 8 minutes is pretty, I think, reasonable for the warm up. That's how I judge the time caps. The reason I have you put them in is so I can look at what you think it's supposed to take and make revisions if it's off one way or the other. Though as a general rule, things take longer than you think they should.
All right.
That's always the thing. The second question you raised was what?
Let me see. It was the timing. It was picking the appropriate warm up and cool downs with the actual.
That's easy to do. Here's how you do it. So the way I build workouts is I build it from the main exercise that I want to do, or sometimes the main exercise are the same. Either I'm working an exercise to get better at that exercise, or I'm working certain muscle groups to make those better, right? So in this case, I knew I wanted to work around the deadlift, right? So I put the deadlift in and I put an accessory deadlift exercise in. And then I think about, well, what areas of the body are required to be active to do deadlifts properly. Lots of areas. I picked a couple that I know beginners tend to have trouble with, right? Such as the lats and lateral flexion, right? Because if those aren't working, your deadlift is unstable. They may not be the specific warm-ups that the client, your particular client needs. You would have to figure, you didn't make the substitutions if you knew what they were in advance, which you might know if you know the client well, or you might observe it during the session that, for example, your client can't maintain spinal extension. That's really hard for them. And if they can't maintain spinal extension, maybe the good morning is better than doing the side plank, because good morning focuses on spinal extension.
Right.
So because you're building it for multiple people to use, you have to just go off a general reasonability given what's going on in the actual workout. As far as the mobility at the end, it's the same thing in the other way. We have a lot of lats between the Romanian deadlift and then the warm-up that we're doing. So we do some lat rolling. The standing half moon pose works lats in a stretch function. We did rolling before lats to loosen the lats, and then we'll stretch them. And because we're holding the bar for a long time, doing some wrist and hand work is helpful to prevent overuse type injuries and help mobilize the hands because they're being used in the deadlift.
Right.
Are there other things you could have done for mobility in there? Sure, there's a lot of other stuff. Those exercises or deadlifts, it's a ton of muscle groups. So, if it's really heavy, you could even do glutes, on the deadlift. So it really just depends on the weight and what's really the working areas of the particular exercise. Any other questions?
No, not off the top of my head.
So when I think about building warm-ups and mobility, I first start with, well, what muscles are being worked? And then I come up with exercises or stretches that apply to those muscles generally. And then I sequence them in a way that makes sense, right? I did all cable movements to save on transition time. I certainly could have done that with dumbbell. If I wanted to do dumbbell pullovers and dumbbell side bends. But it's just easier to have same piece of equipment. So then I start to, sequence the actual warm up itself so that it kind of goes quickly.
All right.
Do you want to try one?
Sure.
Okay. So we'll flip it around and I'll have you share your screen and make sure I have that enabled. One participant, yep. You should be able to click the green button.
Did that pop up?
Yep, I can see it.
All right. So, well, actually, this is, one of the examples I did. Actually, no, I just pulled up, actually, I set up a template. So, for exercises, let me see. So, and then, so basically on the workout, I'm doing too much, correct?
And the workout itself,
Yeah.
you can do all those exercises in the workout. It just depends, how much time you're dedicating to any particular exercise, right? If you're doing dumbbell chest press, which is not all that complicated, right? And if your reps were in the higher range, you could do a 5 by 10 in like, 6 to 8 minutes. It doesn't take that long. You generally don't have a ton of instruction that's necessary for that exercise either. In which case, then you could do your flies and your curls and your rows as a sequence, provided you had easy exercises to do. 4 exercises can be challenging to get through, depending on the complexity of those exercises.
All right. So, all right, so. Exercises. Let's do. So I'm just going to pick one, chest press. So, oh boy. Right. Do chest press in. Right. And then add another exercise of see, I guess that's where I'm trying to think of specific groups and then types of exercise. So chest, like a bench chest press, and now.
So for a strength program, you got to think about the ways that you combine exercises, right? So in the example that I gave you with the deadlift, here, I'm going to write them out for you. I'm going to share my screen and explain it. So on a strength program, there's probably 3 main varieties of them when you really kind of boil it down. Okay, you have strength movement and kind of like a partial movement or a skill movement. And that's what I did up here with Romanian deadlift and the deadlift. So for bench press, for example, you could do bench press and then dumbbell squeezing press. Okay, because this helps with developing pec major for the press, and then we'll just do the bench by itself. In terms of which one you do first, it depends on whether or not you needed to activate those muscles or if you're just trying to train them more, right? Now, this is your kind of like similar variation type exercise. You could also do bench press and required accessories. So bench press works, primarily chest, shoulders, triceps. So if you came up with something that looked like 5x5 bench press, and then might we do 4x20
shoulder press.
tricep push down, and then maybe 40 reps of lateral raise. And then that would be kind of like an overloading type exercise. If you had enough time, you could even do some dumbbell flies. And, that's a perfectly good sequence that people will do. Another option is to train antagonistic muscles too. You can train the opposites so that they're not tired when you do that. Right? So instead of bench press or instead of dips, which is the same pattern, you might design your program so it works opposites, right? So that you have more strength there. So this is like your strength plus accessories. And you could also do in which case it would look something like and that's another structure that you could do. The advantage of that kind of program is you don't have the fatigue based on the main movement. You still have, your full strength on the others. And lots of people use that kind of programming. I tend to find that this style, the first style, works better from my experience, and it's easier to program. So, that's an example of what you could put with your bench press. You can just, add additional movements that are required to increase your effectiveness of it. Or you could even work some of the stability necessary to do the exercise. And you can think about, well, where do people have trouble with bench press? And that's usually pec major engagement as well as the lat engagement. And certainly you could do exercises that focus on the chest and focus on lats as an isometric to strengthen that position. Make sense?
Yeah.
So to give that an example, say we'll keep our bench press, but if we know the person has stability issues, we might do more 5 by 10. And then we can do 2 minutes per side. So in this example, all 3 of those accessories are really targeted to the pec major, which is one of the muscle groups that you need to have good control over in bench press. So it's like this one, where this one kind of covers all the muscle groups needed to do bench, right? You have triceps, you have your shoulders, and you have your dumbbell flies, which works chest. This variation is just locked in on just chest. And if that's really where a person needs to work, this might be more effective for them than one that works all areas.
All right.
So, where I would start is think about the workouts that you would do in the gym. If you were going to do workouts, what would you do? Sometimes coaches make the mistake of thinking they need to write something different than what they would do for a client. It's really the same thing. You might scale it, so it's changed the resistance essentially, or the movement complexity, but it should be the same kind of workouts. I could do any of these workouts that I wrote here. Which one would I probably do? I'd probably do the first one. Since I don't need to work particularly my pec major, I don't have any weaknesses there. I have my, probably do 3x12 on this one. And if I had time, I might hit the opposite one too. You learned in your personal training, certification, there's 8 principal patterns of motion, right? Squat, hinge, lunge, pull, push, lateral flexion, lateral extension, and forward flexion and rotation, right? Those are your, maybe gait, if you want to include that one. And that's how you can break them down. When you think about the workout that I created here, the first one we started with, this is, whether it's this or the run that was originally there, we have the squat pattern and we have the gait pattern. They're both legs. And if you're thinking, of trying to, you work muscle groups as a large movement style pattern of functional training, then the accessories that you might do are going to be based on which muscles are needed to do those kind of main compound exercises. So running might need hamstring work. We didn't do any hamstring work on this. I based the warm-ups more on what's needed for the squat. But if I wanted to emphasize the run part of this, I might do some hamstring type warm-ups and stuff like that. It really depends on what the client needs.
Okay.
Let's see. So when you're creating your workouts, maybe you just start, with the workout itself, right? And wait to do the mobility section and the cool down, because I think for you, trying to do them all at once is too hard. To give you another example of another conditioning workout we could do, we could do Okay. Simple little workout. So we're gonna do dumbbell thrusters at 25-15, and then we'll do 2 minutes of farmer's carry. And we'll do 3 reps to start, and then 6, 9, 12. We might put the reps maybe in front. But these are basically rounds. So we'll do 3 thrusters and then farmer's carry, and then 6 thrusters and then farmer's carry, and then 9. It's an increasing amount of reps to do, so it gets harder as you go. We do the whole workout 4 times.
All right.
Okay, that's the main element of the workout. Do you know how to do thrusters?
Yes.
Do you know how to do farmer's carry?
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, it's almost like you're carrying a suitcase walking.
Yes. Okay.
Now, 2 minutes. What are you doing? I get.
Yeah, you walk around with them. You hold
All
them.
right. It doesn't. All right. So for warm ups, you would consider doing
Well,
air squats.
before we get to the warm up, you're having trouble coming up with something like this. This is okay. Come up with stuff like this first. Because I
Okay.
think the whole process is overwhelming you. Okay.
Right.
And how many different sets of 2 or 3 exercises in conditioning could you put together? There's all sorts of variations for conditioning. Your strength workouts will usually have the movements more separated, right? So strength could be something like 6 rounds of max reps. Or we'll say maybe we'll do 15 reps. Lat pull down, that may be the main element we're gonna do. Maybe we'll make it 10 reps. Okay. So that's the main exercise we're gonna do is lat pull down, right? And then you would put in some other exercises that might be related to those patterns, right? Such as maybe bench row and high pull.
Rowing?
Pulling type exercises.
Right. But rowing, you could also add that.
You could add rowing, but rowing is going to be more conditioning based.
Oh,
If you're really working on
I'm sorry. Yep.
Yeah. Now, if you did a sprint row at a high resistance, right? If you did like sprint for, maybe like 10 calories or max speed, that would be okay because then it's still strength focused when you're sprinting.
Okay.
The difference between conditioning and strength is intensity. And if you're sprinting, it's going to be strength, right? Even if it's not that high load.
Okay. So I guess I'm trying to come up with my own workouts, but I could come up with workouts by looking at others and picking from those.
Sure.
Right.
I mean, you don't have to invent anything new. There's nothing new in
I
workouts.
just need to know how to do it, and I'm like anything that's CrossFit related, such as the clean and the jerk and clean. It's been a while. That's going to be a bad idea for me.
You don't have to teach Olympic lifting.
Right. But there's some CrossFit movements that would be good for somebody, that's starting something. I mean, a program.
I mean, CrossFit, if I want to make it more of a CrossFit style workout, this one we just did here, CrossFit would probably have you do something like row 50 calories. And then 30 sumo deadlift high pull. Probably 20, and then do something like 3 rounds. And then like 10 pull-ups. It looks something like that.
Right.
You know, the way that they're organized is a little bit different, but that's really, you know, how it works. In our strength class, right, if we're working pulling, we probably do sumo deadlift and just pull-ups. We do them, you know, two elements, and then do the warm-ups and conditioning for that. Warm-ups and mobility at the end. So where to start is, you know, start with one program rather than going back and forth between the two. Start with your strength one and visualize you have 8 boxes, right? Each box is a workout itself, and put in 2 to 4 exercises in each box that have some reasonability to have them together. Okay, such as the one I wrote for you right here, right? Rowing, sumo deadlift, high pull, and pull-ups go together. They're all pulling, right? And that's one. And then you go to the next one, and then you get your groups, your 8 groups of exercises. And when you have all them done, then you can start to think about, well, what warm-ups and cool downs might I do for each one? And you would just follow the principles we talked about and looking at what needs to be warmed up to do those exercises and what needs to be stretched afterwards to help with recovery.
Right.
You know, you could do total body workouts and conditioning, certainly, but you don't necessarily need to. You really couldn't do it in strength. You don't have enough time to work every muscle in strength function. The closest thing would be to do 2 major exercises, you know, bench press and I don't know, front squat or something like that. You know, you get most of the muscle groups that way.
Right.
So when you go through your program, I would start just that way. Workout 1, it's going to have pull-ups, or for beginner clients, it'll probably have TRX rows. It'll have curls, and it'll have push-ups. That's the first workout. And then workout 2, we'll work on the squat and the good morning, and maybe some kind of sit-up, right? And there's lots of kind of good mornings and sit-ups and stuff like that, but these are the principal pieces. And start that way, create your set of 8, and then you can start to think about the sequence that you do. How many reps of each one that you might do? What order do you do? Do you pair them together or not? Right? You know, if my workout is TRX rows, curls, and push-ups, I could do them all one at a time. I could do, you know, 5 sets of 10 of each one and just go down the line.
All
I
right.
could put the push-ups with the curls. You could alternate push-ups and curls, sure. I could do all 3 and I can do them as rounds. And in that example, they're all reasonable decisions.
Okay.
If I'm working strength as my main focus, and if it was a row, you know, I want to make the row at as high angle as the client could do for like sets of, you know, 10 maybe, or even 5. I might need to go to raise the load so that it's heavy enough to be strength. But that's really, really how you do it.
Okay.
So when you write them, I would write, just like you see here, I try doing 1 page per workout and start with maybe the first 4, make it even easier, right? 4 groups of exercises, right? So I got 1, 2, 3, and 4.
All right.
Okay. And then put the main exercises in there. And then go back up to 1. Okay, so I picked these 3 exercises. What reps, sets, and sequencing makes sense to me to do? And I'll do that for each one of these. And then I'll go back up. Okay, well, now I got my workouts. What do I need to warm up to do these things? And then I'll put the warm up in on each one. And then, okay, well, where did I work? I want to do mobility on everything that I worked. And then put in the mobility. And then you finish your first 4 exercises. And then you just repeat the process one more time to get 5, 6, 7, and 8.
All right.
That's literally how I program for the whole gym.
All right.
Any questions?
No, I think it gives me a more better understanding and an idea of how to do it.
That's how you do your programming for yourself and working out. At the end of the day, you pick a couple exercises that you want to work, and then you think about, well, what order do I want to do them, and how many reps, and what kind of load I'm going to do, right? You think about that.
Right.
Maybe you don't write it down, but you have to make those decisions. And you make the decisions what you need to warm up to do them. And afterwards, you're like, well, this feels tight, so I'll stretch this thing.
Right.
That's it. Same thing that you're doing. The workouts I write for clients, the same kind of workouts that I do. I don't do as many because I write lots of workouts, can't do them all, but any one of them I should be able to do.
Right.
All right. How long should it take you to write to do the 4 workouts? You should be able to knock out all 4 in an hour. Shouldn't take you any longer than that. If it takes you longer than that, you're focusing on the wrong things, right? Because I wrote these 2 just now, right? That took me not very long, right?
Right.
And then I want to put in my sequencing, right? So for rows, I'm actually going to take rows, I'm going to put them with TRX curls, which is another exercise. I'm going to sequence them together, and we'll do 4 sets of 10 rows. Maybe 20 curls. I'm going to actually turn it to inverted rows to make that a little bit harder, because those are more difficult to do. That's our first exercise. And then push-ups. Maybe I'll stick them up front. And we'll do 60 push-ups per time. And we'll do 4 rounds of this per time. And our time cap for the push-ups. Time cap for this. Maybe 10 minutes. Okay, so right now I'm at 13 minutes, and that's the main element of the workouts. Okay.
Right.
That's the sequencing. Okay, that took me a minute to sequence it. Right. Then I think about, what do I need to warm up for push-ups? Core, chest, triceps, right? So warm up becomes maybe a plank hold, maybe some leg lifts, right, to warm up the core, right? We got the shoulders in the plank hold, and maybe we do some banded tricep extensions to get the triceps working. Okay,
All right.
plank holds 30 seconds. Actually, we can do all this. Maybe we do it all at 1 minute per 1 minute per item, right? So we can just go like this. So we'll just do it for a minute, the leg lifts and this for a minute. So we'll do 2 rounds, 1 minute per exercise, 6 minutes, boom, warm-up's done. Then I go down here and I say, okay, well, what did I work today? You know, I work biceps, back, triceps, so I can do some stretches for the T-spine from all the rowing that we did. So maybe some lacrosse ball stretch or rolling on scapula. I could do some tricep stretches because we use them a lot. And maybe some chest stretches. I just did one for you right there. Now you got 3 to do. Is there one of the reasons, like, why don't I just do it for you, right? Well, do you know how to do chest stretches? Do you know any?
Yes.
Okay, good. Then you can do them. But you might have also told me no. Like, actually, I don't know how to do that. And what will happen is if you try to do the workout and you get to that part, you're like, well, I don't even know what to do, right? You're not going to pick stuff you don't know. You're only going to put stuff down that you do know. That's why I have you make it, because you're just not going to pick stuff you don't know what to do. That's just the nature of people, right? Is there anything in this workout you don't know how to coach?
I'm trying to remember, like the TRX inverted row. I think it's you're facing away. Wait a minute, right? It's a row.
Yeah, that's not a movement. That's not a movement you know that well. Do you know how to do a seated row with our cable machine?
Oh, yes.
Okay, then make it seated row.
All right.
You'd have to specify a weight, so maybe 90 pounds and 60 pounds. Okay, do you know how to do TRX curls?
Yeah.
Okay. So that becomes, you know, your variation. Or so maybe since you don't have to go over to the other side of the gym because they're on opposite sides of the gym, maybe we just make it dumbbell curls and we just do it next door to each other. Or we can even make it easier. We can do chin downs, right? Because you can use a pull-up bar, it's the same machine. All right, just holding in the chin up form, you're doing chin downs. And that's the reason, you know, the reason I don't provide the programs is you might be able to figure out how to do TRX rows and you might or might not find a good reference for them, right? But you know how to do seated rows. You said yes. You're like, yeah, I know how to do that exercise. Then you will write seated rows. Is there a big difference between the TRX row and the seated row? They're both rows.
Okay.
You might be too strong for the TRX row, right? The inverted row is a little harder. It's too easy for me. So I need to use more load, or I need to elevate my legs. I need to make that body weight harder for it to be effective for me. But there's lots of kinds of rows you can do. You can dumbbell rows and all sorts of other type of stuff. Our Cybex machine has a chest supported row, so you can do standing rows and so on and so forth. So, any other questions?
Not that I can think of now.
Okay. So work on your first 4. I will save this document for you so you can refer to it, and I'll collect the video essentially, and this way you can, if when you're doing it you get stuck, you know, because right now everything makes sense, and then as soon as I have you do it on your own, it won't make sense anymore, because that's how it goes. You can replay it, and that may help you create them.
All right.
All right. I gotta go. Something's going on with Katie. I gotta help her. She got some work emergency she's working through. But yeah, we'll work on it on Saturday. And just keep it simple. Don't try to overcomplicate it. It's just an outline of a program because we don't have the client in front of us. When they're in front of us, we'll make those adaptions based on what we're seeing. That's the benefit of personal training, right? You have a program, yes, but you see something needs to be changed, you change it.
All right.
All right, good stuff. I will see you tomorrow.
Bright and early.
All right, see you then.
All right. See ya.